We are in a climate where the Europeans have done a lot of anthropological studies of other people. They studied American Indians, they studied the Africans, our ancestors, they studied tribes lost somewhere in Australia, but no one has actually sat down and studied the European. No one has gone into looking at the European from an anthropological standard, how they really are, where they really came from. What is the nature of this person? What is the nature of this tribe, this clan, this family? So what I'm going to do is give you a background into the nutritional causes of what we call today racism.
Dr. Liaila of Afrika opens his lecture on white racism and mental illness by highlighting a critical point. Europeans have traveled across the globe, conquering, colonizing, and studying the world's people. Yet no serious studies have been conducted on Europeans themselves. He challenges his audience to consider the fact that African people and other oppressed groups do not truly understand the nature, psychology, and history of Europeans, the very group that has subjugated them for centuries. Dr. Afrika stresses that this lack of study prevents oppressed people from fully understanding their enemy and therefore limits their ability to effectively resist systems of domination. He then transitions into discussing how racism, imposed and perpetuated by Europeans, has detrimental effects on the nutrition and health of black people. He asks the question, where did Europeans come from and how does their origin shape their behavior? According to Dr. Afrika, Europeans emerged approximately 4,000 years ago. Their introduction into history, he notes, was characterized by violence, a pattern that continues in their collective behavior. Because the European environment was harsh and its soil nutrient deficient compared to the rich lands of Africa, Dr. Afrika suggests that Europeans developed behaviors shaped by scarcity, aggression, and survival in nutrient-poor conditions.
Now, the Europeans came from somewhere, first of all. They claim they walked from Asia all the way up to Europe, and they established their civilization in Europe. They took a 4,000-mile walk from Asia up to Europe. That is their claim. And they claim their race is from 3 Sanskrit words. That is their claim. But the only thing we have historically to document them is what the facts are. There are a lot of people who claim that they were made and created in a laboratory, the Europeans. There are a lot of people who claim they are a degenerate black person, someone who suffers from a melanin deficiency. That is true. But the facts are they came from somewhere. So we can look at where they came from and what caused them to behave the way they behave, strictly as a science, like you look at any other animal. There are human beings that behave like animals, and then there are animals that behave like human beings. So we're going to look at some animals that behave like human beings. Now, according to, let me go to the chalkboard for a minute. Now, we're going back to maybe 1.5 million years ago. And during that period of time, they had what they call the Ice Age. And that was about from 1.5 million years ago.
May I have your attention, please? Workshop, sir.
I'll let him pause there.
Dealing with abusive relationships. Room 102. The challenges of international interracial relationships is in room.
Yes, so we know that the Ice Age started, the most recent one started 1.5 million years ago, and it just stopped about 10,000 years ago. That's when it stopped 10,000 years ago. And the ice receded about 5,000 years ago. And the Europeans entered into history 4,000 years ago. This is when they first recorded this race called the Europeans 4,000 years ago. That was recorded on a pallet, on a mace head in Africa when they first met the Europeans. That's 4,000 years ago. So this is when they entered history. And of course, they entered history violently. And we say they were violent people. Well, they came from the Ice Age. Now, we're in Europe. We're around France, Germany, Sweden, the Slavic countries. Those areas are known as glaciated. Glaciated soil, when the ice melts, the ice floods the area, and when it floods, it washes away all the vital nutrients. This is what happened. So I'm going to just outline some of them and go over some of them that were washed away from the soil. Selenium. Anyone raised on Ice Age glaciated soil, that's in France, that's in Germany, that's in England, is going to have a selenium deficiency. This is fact. This is what the soil content is. They're going to have a zinc deficiency. They're also going to have a phosphate deficiency. Or phosphorus, excuse me. That's just some of the deficiencies, just from eating plants that are raised on this glaciated soil in Britain, in France, in Sweden, in the European countries. So they're raised on soil that is depleted of these nutrients. When you have a selenium deficiency, you become irritable very easily. Your mind becomes unstable. When you have a zinc deficiency, you lack a neural, it's an element used to transmit nerve messages. So your nerve messages are not transported balancedly, you see, just by having a zinc deficiency. Then when you have a phosphate and potassium deficiency, by the way, this is the soil that raised the plants that they were eating. It was deficient in these nutrients. And when you look up these nutrients in a textbook, you'll find that a person that lacks them is violent, very easily irritated, and suffers from what they call schizophrenia, which is a mind and mood disorder. So the Europeans are raised on what we call glaciated soil. So they are deficient in these nutrients from 5, 4, 10,000 years ago. So they continuously were eating plants that were deficient of these nutrients. And when you're deficient of certain nutrients, each nutrient controls a form of behavior. If I take away your selenium, you will become sterile. Because selenium is highest in concentration in the male system where the testicles is, in the sperm, selenium. So is zinc. That's why long ago they told brothers to eat oysters. They were after the zinc, you see. And that's the highest concentration is in the sperm. The highest concentration of vitamin C is around the semen. That's 8 to 10 times higher than the vitamin C that's in the systemic floating blood system. So these vital nutrients were not in the soil of the Europeans. Therefore, nutritionally, their behavior could only be one of unstable personality, violence, aggression, easily irritated, and then, added on to this deficient soil, we have a pineal gland. I'm going to go to the board again. The pineal gland, that's the one that makes melanin. And when you're deficient, their pineal gland is 60 to 80% non-functional, whereas African people have a 100% functional pineal gland. Pineal gland is a gland that is in the center of your brain, and it makes the brain cell for all the cells in the body. It is the master gland. Without it, nothing happens. nothing. All they tell us is that the pineal gland makes black. But they do not tell you that without the pineal gland, there's no nucleus to any cell in your body. If your pineal gland is very active and stimulated, you can make yourself darker. The Europeans have used experiments where they put themselves in a glass bubble and just stimulated the pineal gland without the sun and became darker. Because they stimulated the pineal gland to make the melanocyte stimulating hormone. So they are deficient in melanin, you see. And without the melanin, you have no balance. You lack spirituality, you see. So we have three major things. We have the melanin deficiency. This is anatomically. I'm not going into social science. We all know about prejudice and all that sort of thing, but we tend to not look at the animal that behaves like a human being. So we have the mineral deficiency, the selenium, the zinc, the phosphorus, potassium, and we have the melanin deficiency. All of this is coming out of the Ice Age, where the soil was depleted of these nutrients. So we have a melanin deficiency. When you have a melanin deficiency, you have something that's called obsessive compulsive behavior. I hope you can understand my writing. A melanin deficiency produces obsessive compulsive behavior. This behavior is the behavior of what you would call an addictive person, someone that has to do things step by step. Because when you hide melanin, you are creative, you're more intuitive. So you create your own steps. But when you're deficient in melanin, you have to go step by step by step. And that's called addictive behavior. If I were to teach someone with a melanin deficiency how to dance, I better paint the steps by step on the floor. That is because they're coming out of a melanin deficiency. And that's obsessive compulsive behavior, which you call racism. So, obsessive compulsive people are inherently inferior. Now, all I've spoken to you about is what is nutritionally going on with the person that we call the Europeans, the Caucasians. What we have been going on in our plight with them is dealing with them socially and say they do this socially and they do this socially and we don't like this, so we protest and we march and all that sort of thing. But we have not, as I said earlier, looked at them as strictly as they look at another group of people. They go in, they take the scientists, and they examine a group of people, and they call it anthropology. Now, we're going in, and we're taking the science of our mind, because the mind means science, to know, and we're looking at them. They come from a glaciated area, selenium deficiency, zinc deficiency, phosphorus deficiency, potassium deficiency. They also come from a melanin deficiency. And what does all of this produce? I repeat, unstable thinking, easily irritated, aggressive behavior, distorts reality. Distortion of reality is known as a psychosis. If I show you the pyramids in Africa and you say black people are dumb, then you are distorting reality. The thing with a mind that's in this kind of state, in this diseased state, is that it believes first and then it sees. You are used to thinking seeing is believing. If you see the truth, if I show you the pyramids, and I say it sits in the direct center of the landmass, and I say a star passes over it every 50,000 years, and then I show you the calculus in the building, and the geometry in the building, and then I show you the space age, which was invented in Africa when they did astrology, as you call it. That was the opening of the space age. I show you all this evidence, and you say African people are inferior, then you are suffering from a selenium deficiency, a zinc deficiency, a phosphorus deficiency, and a melanin deficiency, because you have distorted reality to inferiority. A group of people who are inferior use their imagination and create an illusion that they are superior. There is nothing in recorded history to document that the Caucasians are superior. Nothing. When you read the book Race and Civilization, you find out that they just stopped cannibalism in 1946 in Germany. You have to realize that I haven't given you the social Wolfpack behavior of the Europeans. We haven't gotten into them as a socializing creature. Remembering that our African ancestors, what makes us great is that we founded human relationship. We know how to get along with each other. The black man knows how to get along with the black woman until Europeans introduced him to his distortions, you see. What made us powerful is not the math, not the chemistry. It's human relationship. We know how to get along with each other, our children, and God. It's relationship. We have mastered the science of relationship. But when you suffer from a mineral deficiency such as this, and a melanin deficiency such as this, and you are inferior, you're going to distort reality. And that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with some animals that behave like human beings. So we constantly try to get them to change their minds, to change their behavior with all these wonderful intellectual thoughts about harmony and peace and love and brotherhood and all that sort of thing. But you don't do that to a person who is drunk. You don't give them an intellectual sandwich. You have to treat a person like that. You have to first cleanse their system, get rid of their addiction. You find out that they are deficient in glutamic acid. They have a glutamic acid deficiency. This feeds the brain, glutamic acid. I don't want to clutter the board too much, although I do need an eraser. Now, I told you about the Ice Age. The most recent one is the 1.5 million years ago, which ended 10,000 years ago, and the ice regressed it 5,000 years ago, and then you had the European enter in history 4,000 years ago. This is the only recorded incident of them in history. The Romans and the Greeks are not Europeans. They are Mediterranean cultures. See, what has happened is a person hits some history. They have written themselves into history, and you believe it. They are not from the Roman Empire. They are not from Greece. They never were a part of it at all. Now, the ice regressed. I'm trying to give you the social climate. Now, when these icebergs are moving, they sound like lightning. They like bolts, and they rock the whole earth. And it's like an earthquake all the time. You walk down the street, and the street opens up and swallows you. You see, this is the Ice Age. This is the kind of social environment they were in. Understand me? Now, with all that going on, you have human traps. Now, I know you think that the Europeans are buying us as slaves to work the land, but some of us were sold just for delicacies. Some of us were eaten. They have human traps. They have traps for how to capture children. They have human broths, how to bake a child. These are in their recipe books. Race and Civilization is the name of the book, and if you want to know how the Europeans really behave, you read a book called Dirty. Dirt. That's what it's called. Race and Civilization is one book, and the other book is Dirt. That's the title. I can't think of the authors right now. But the behavior is what we're talking about. And when you have this atmosphere where the earth is shaking and rolling under your feet, it can produce a lot of fear in you. And then the food lie, because the land is frozen and the water is frozen, so you have a shortage of food. So you're going from starvation to overeating, starvation to overeating, which we call binging or bulimia. And when you meet people, you transmit the same illness to them. And so you got black people that overeat, and they go on a diet, which is starvation, and they overeat, and they go on a diet. So we're just copying their behavior. See, they don't have to teach us confusion, they are confusion. You see. Nonetheless, we have all this going on, and then we have something that closely resembles their social condition. And the social condition is that of what we call a wolf pack. It's Wolfpack behavior. In that when a wolf captures its prey, they are together killing the carcass, and then once the carcass is killed, then they start fighting amongst each other. And that's what they always do. Their wolf packs today are called alliances. North American Treaty Alliance, United Nations. These are alliances that they form to attack a caucus, or be that Africa, Somalia, Ethiopia. And once they have attacked it, then they fight amongst each other. Yeah. This is Wolfpack behavior. And the wolf always resorts to juvenile behavior after it captures its prey. It becomes very childish and licks each other and cuddles up and does these very childish behaviors. And sure enough, after they capture their prey, be it African people in prison or sexually, however they want to capture us, or capture us through peace or capture us through war, any tool that they use is to rule and control you. It doesn't matter what the tool is. The tool can be peace. The tool can be religion. Any device they use is going to be used to rule and control you. If they give you money, they use money to rule and control you. 90% of all the millionaires, black millionaires, invest in white people, in their businesses, excuse me. So money is just used. You say, all this money black people make. Yes, but they gave it to you, so whoever gave it to you for their benefit. So what they gave you is to rule and control you. So you fight to vote. Now that you vote, and they use voting to rule and control you. Then you fight to get in the classroom. And what do they do? The miseducation of the Negro. Do I have to go into that? They use education to rule and control.
Attention, please. Workshop, boys and men.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Yes, so what we have is the Wolfpack behavior. Now I'm going over a lot of large concepts very fast, I know that. So, what I'm trying to say is they Wolfpack. That's why they come together and have sex, which we call orgies. See, they always come together for these activities. They come together and burn a Negro at the stake, and you called it the Ku Klux Klan. Then the meeting's over, then they fight each other at work and doing this same little childish behavior. Or if they have a celebration, they use alcohol, and then they start acting silly. And then you wonder why they're acting silly, because they were always silly. But the thing is, I'm just trying to identify some of the things so you can start looking at an animal that's behaving like a human being. Because to be human doesn't mean you have 2 legs and 2 arms. Human is a way of behavior. That's why our ancestors said, when you finish what we call the rites of passage, which is a German term for a course of academic study. We're academicians. We teach. We learn. But the German invented this term rites of passage to kind of throw you off. Like they invented the term naturopathy, which is my field, naturopathic medicine, to throw you off. They are not going to call it African hygienic health. They are not going to call anything of ours African and let us know. So they invent another term. Remember, they're coming from the Ice Age, 5,000 years ago. Here you are, African man and woman, averaging 200 to 300 years of age. They're living to be 30 years of age. You have the equivalent of a PhD at 12 years old. That's your level of intelligence in Africa. What you're fighting to get to, a 12-year-old kid already has. So here you come with all this intelligence and this vast vocabulary, because remember, they're coming out of the Ice Age, so they didn't have indoor plumbing like our ancestors had, or glass windows, remember this. We had a whole vocabulary of words, they didn't know what we were talking about. And you're trying to pick out some words to communicate to them. So there is no connection between what you are saying at all. None whatsoever. It's similar to you don't know anything about, say, if I start talking about the neurohormonal connections and all that, and I'm talking biochemistry, and you walk into class and I'm giving this biochemical lecture, you say, well, this is a mystery to me. So when they walk into an African college or university, they say, this is a mystery system. This is all a mystery to me. So they name our system a mystery system, because it is a mystery to them. Excuse me. Nonetheless, this is the condition that they were in when they came into Africa. Mineral deficiency from the glaciated soil. The plants raised on that soil lacked the nutrients. And then they had a melanin deficiency from a calcified pineal gland. So they had these two biological things working toward their degree of insanity. Now we find that everyone had the same illness. If all of you are Europeans, all of you have the same illness because all of us are raised on the same soil, mind you. So your scientists have it, your religious leaders have it, your teachers have it, all of them have it. So they do not know they have it. Look, when our ancestors were trying to teach them about religion, about God, they did three things to this concept, this idea, this philosophy, which we never called a religion. All Oriental cultures call it a philosophy. The Europeans organize a group, a man in top of it, in charge of it, and they call it religion. That's altogether different from what we had as religion. So they organized their religions to inferiorize the woman, put her down, justify slavery. That's two things that their religions are going to do. Inferiorize the woman, justify slavery. That's two things, remember. And anything that refers to African religion is going to be called pagan. You go into the European version of the Muhammad or Islamic religion, it inferiorizes woman, it justifies slavery, and it calls anything African pagan. You go into the European version of Christianity, women are counted with cattle and all that sort of thing. It inferiorizes woman, justifies slavery, and call anything that deals with African religion pagan. It does these things, all of them, all the major European religions, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. All of those are European religions. Anything that the European uses to reinforce their position. So as I mentioned before, if they give you religion, it's to rule and control you. If I give you the right to vote, it's to rule and control you. If I give you money, it's to rule and control you. All of these things are done to rule and control us. Now, when our ancestors were architecting and putting together our culture, they did not look over their shoulder at what the Europeans are doing. And we need not look over our shoulder at what the Europeans are doing. We don't need that to grow and develop and learn. Because as long as we look over our shoulder at them, we are always attached to them. So, traditionally, if I go in and I talk about health, nutrition, people say, well, where's your documentation? Oh, what are your credentials? Oh, you mean what plantation I was raised on? Why don't you just come out and say it? You know, that's what I want to tell them, but I understand we're all coming from the same kind of ignorance, so I say, oh, yeah, I went to school, you know, I got a piece of paper from the white man. He says my brain is officially in my head. You know, so I showed a piece of paper, but it means nothing to me. You know, and they say, oh, so I mentioned something about the glaciated ice age where the soil was robbed and all that stuff. Well, where's your documentation? Where's your evidence? I just point to white people. There's my evidence. You know, but, you know, I can't do that. I got to be official and scientific, and I run down all of this stuff about the soil and all that sort of thing, and I run it down the melanin deficiency. When you have a melanin deficiency, you're going to have obsessive compulsive behavior because you're protecting an inferior position. When you just arrived on the scene of civilization, 4,000 years ago and you arrived violently coming into Africa, and catfish had to throw you out, I'm using his nickname, Memphis. The city of Memphis named that Menace. Yeah, right. Okay, Menace. I had to go through all that. He threw them out and united Upper and Lower Nile. You see, so when they entered history, it was violently. Now we have all of these tools that are used to control and ruin us, and then we also have romance that is used to control and ruin us. And then you look up the word Rome, and you see it comes from Urim, and Urim comes from Rim, and Rim means the Nile. And Nile means the laws of the great truth, the laws of the female and male attributes of God. That's why God was always called Mother, Father God in our culture, because we could not conceive of a man being balanced by himself. So we call God Mother, Father God. You see. So the whole concept of romance is African, but they took it and used it to control and ruin us. The first epic on romance is the epic about Attah, the romance of Attah, an African brother. Because romance is conceived as I meet a woman, and a woman meets me, boy meets girl, that kind of thing. And you go into this yin-yang symbolism of man and woman, which the Europeans also took. It goes like this. Yin-yang. The yin-yang is the male and female together, you see. And they just took out this part and left the other part, because that connects it to Africa. Just as they took the number 5 and took out the ankh that was on top of it and just left this part. Because if you leave that in, it connects to Africa. So they took all these out. It's a thing about the words you get. If you ever looked at the old Bibles, you see these words, all these decorations around them. That is the holistic meaning of the letter. That word is a story in itself. So you won't find all of these. I'm digressing here. I don't like to do that to you. And you find all these curly cues around words in the old Bibles. That's the holistic meaning that our ancestors put on the words. So the Europeans could not deal with all of that, so they just left it that way.
Dr. Afrika further explains the connection between biology, environment, and behavior, focusing on melanin and nutritional deficiency. He argues that people with very low melanin levels, such as Europeans, are more prone to obsessive, compulsive, and addictive behaviors. This biological predisposition, combined with poor diets lacking essential nutrients, produces destructive cultural and psychological patterns. He warns that when Africans adopt the same diet as Europeans, highly processed, unnatural, and nutritionally empty, they too begin to mirror these same unhealthy and violent behavioral tendencies. Moreover, Dr. Afrika contends that the European diet directly reinforces negative beliefs and perceptions about African people. A poor diet, he explains, creates a poor mindset, which in turn fosters destructive ideologies such as white supremacy. He dismantles the myth of white supremacy by arguing that truly superior people would not behave with such savagery, brutality, and inhumanity. He teaches his audience to see claims of European superiority as illusions sustained by violence, deception, and control, rather than by the truth or genuine achievement. Dr. Afrika's call to action is, Africans must realize that the system of white supremacy cannot be defeated by intellect nor negotiation alone. Europeans did not grant freedom voluntarily. They seized power through violence and control. Therefore, Africans must become physically and mentally healthy enough to reclaim their own liberation. A return to holistic health through proper nutrition, cultural awareness, and spiritual grounding is essential for resisting oppression and dismantling the psychological and physical chains imposed by racism.